Welcome to the KPC Smart Money Podcast with Kevin and Karen Christ. So, some of you have been listening to our podcast for a couple of years now know that, we're not always talking about financial things. We like to kind of break it up a little bit. We have a radio show where we talk about, 98% of the time we're talking about financial things like, investments and how taxes, affect your retirement. But we want to talk about something a little different today that's near and dear to our hearts, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's mission trips. Why? You hear people go on a mission trip. What is a mission trip? What does a mission trip mean? Why do you feel called to do it? We want to get into all that. So just to kind of give you a little background, I started out with a good friend of mine that, he was going to Cuba on a mission trip. And so I didn't really know, exactly what that meant. But, they said it was a Christian mission trip. So, I don't really matter if you're atheist or Jewish or Muslim, whatever. I think you'll find this podcast interesting anyway. But, in this case, it was a Christian mission trip. Now, what does that mean? They're going down to talk about, to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, I thought, okay, I'm a Christian. I should probably be doing something like that. Well, the least I can do is help him go. So what he was doing is he was asking people to help contribute to pay for his trip. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm not going to go on mission trips, at least I could help missionaries, right? That might get me a spot in heaven.
Wow, okay.
Well,
we'll
look,
talk about your theology later.
Well, I'm just teasing. But I thought, I might as well help Andrew, and so that's what I did. Now, after a couple of years, he went on a second mission trip, and after a couple of years, he said to me, he goes, "Hey, do you want to go with me to Cuba?" And I thought, wow, I never thought about that, right? And so finally, I prayed about it a little bit, and I felt like I was being called to go, and it sounded like a fun thing and a good thing. And it was super interesting. It was, we went to these little towns in Cuba, and we were in Trinidad, Cuba, which is a tourist town. It's in the UNESCO World Heritage Cities, and it was kind of a cool place. And we actually went in people's houses and shared the gospel. But you went on the second trip, and then Karen, I said, you got to do this. By the end of the week, I was just like, I just thought it was so cool, meeting the Cuban people and seeing what they look like. It's a mistake to say, well, I don't like Chinese people or Cuban people or Iranian people because of their government. It's the government. But the people of Cuba are awesome people.
Yes, they are.
And so I think sometimes people make that mistake. So I had a really good time, and I told Karen, I said, man, I really want you to go with me. So what was your experience like?
Again, I love the Cuban people. You are shocked, absolutely shocked at the poverty level. It changes your mind when you come back to the United States and you see the level of wealth that we have here. Even what we call poverty is not the kind of everyday poverty that Cubans experience. And it gives you a different perspective. One, it makes you absolutely grateful for all that you have in the United States. And I found it really shocking for the amount of people in the United States who are not grateful for all that they have simply because they live here. And I also found that there's so many things we take for granted that in other countries people have zero access to. They don't even have access to basic medical care. They are given a bag of rice, a bag of beans, a bag of sugar, and a bag of coffee. That is what their government gives them for food. And anything else that they want to eat, vegetables, protein, they have got to figure out a way to do that themselves.
They all have a side hustle.
Yeah, and a lot of bartering going on. It was shocking to me to see how many times the Cuban government has messed around with the currency And every time they did that, it just made the politicians richer and the average person poorer. And then COVID hit, which is now even unimaginable. It was bad before COVID, and it has got exponentially worse since COVID. But to see that there are still people who have hope in Cuba, to see that, they don't really have jobs that are going to pay them anything. So they have a very social, not socialistic, social environment. They are incredibly relational. Family, friends, neighbors mean everything to them. So it was eye-opening, really, to see how other people in the world live and to get out of the United States and be able to actually experience it. It's not the same to read about it. It's absolutely different to experience it and to be able to do some good, even in a small way, for other people is an amazing experience.
Did you have any situations, speaking of, relational, before I ask you this question, there's kind of a joke in Cuba that said, we'll you pretend that you have a job and we'll pretend to pay you.
Right.
Right. So the average Cuban probably makes $20 a month if they have a job, right? And yet a pack of 4 chicken thighs costs like $4.
The prices in Cuba were almost the same as here.
Yeah, a microwave that you could buy probably for $98 on sale was $210 in a Cuban department store. So needless to say, if you go into somebody's house and they have a TV, and it's usually, if they do have a TV, it's probably not any bigger than your computer screen on your computer, or it's an old box TV. And they're the rich people, right? Because most of them don't even have a TV. What you would call a couch is a wooden bench, and it seemed like everybody had the same bench. If they had cushions on the bench, that meant they probably had a side hustle or they were a snitch for the government.
And that's the other thing that was very unusual. If somebody did have money, you had to be very careful because chances are they were a snitch. And you would walk down the street and people would stare at you. And no matter how much you tried to look not American, it's really, you are, okay? Even if you're wearing kind of rags, the quality of your clothes is better than what most people are wearing down there. And you would get stared at a lot. And you weren't sure you were being stared at because they have never seen an American, literally, or you being stared at because somebody is reporting immediately back to the federal government.
Yeah, it's when you walk down the street, you see a lot of people that have shirts on with English writing, right? That somebody from a mission trip brought down and left clothes. We bring what you wear. We wear some of our older clothes that we don't care too much about, and we leave them all behind. I mean, even down to your underwear, where they will wash your underwear and they'll pass it out to the members of the church. So, we go down there and we'll work through a certain church, and the church workers will make appointments for us to go in their barrio, if you will, their community. And so you have a church worker and we have a translator. So you go 3 people into a house. And in our case, we weren't building churches. We weren't fixing people's teeth. We were preaching the gospel. So there's different kind of mission trips. Some people say, well, they went down to Guatemala and they built a church. Well, that's nice and that's good. That's a certain kind of mission trip. The kind of mission trip we like is we like to go in and like to talk to people about Jesus because of the way that Jesus changed our life. So anyway, it's interesting, when we go on a real, like a vacation, we like to go scuba diving, but we also go once or twice a year on these mission trips. And it's like a vacation because you're going to another place and you're experiencing different foods and different cultures, but you're getting to do something that makes you feel better. And that's share the good news with people that have never heard it.
And now we are going into Ecuador and we are setting up small medical tents where People are getting their blood pressure taken. They're getting their blood sugar taken. They're getting eye exams, and people are donating just hundreds of eyeglasses where some of these people have never had good sight, and they don't even have glasses. So, not only in Ecuador are we sharing the gospel, but we are helping with their physical needs.
So look, I think we're running out of time. Let's talk about Ecuador in part 2, because that's a kind of a different situation. So next week we're going to continue this in part 2, because it's a different situation in what we're doing in Ecuador, and I want to get deeper into that and what we're doing down there. So listen to us next week. Thanks for listening this week, and we'll be back to talk to you about Ecuador.
You've been listening to the KPC Smart Money Podcast with Kevin and Karen Christ. To listen to more episodes, visit kpcsmartmoney.com. You can also find the KPC Smart Money Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher.
KPC Financial Solutions is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through KPC Financial Solutions, LLC, a registered investment company. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any reference to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. KPC Financial Solutions is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by KPC Financial Solutions. Hypothetical examples have been provided for illustrative purposes only. It does not represent a real-life scenario and should not be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation.